Welcome back to day 2, unit 6, lesson 6.2, Introduction to Simplifying Rational Expressions. A rational expression is said to be in its simplest form when the numerator, the top of my fraction, and the denominator, the bottom of my fraction, have no factors in common other than 1. So there's nothing that they share anymore. That's when we know that we are in simplest form. So I just have one quick example for you to do. And it's just to simplify this rational expression, x squared plus 3x over x squared plus 5x. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to factor both the top and the bottom, the numerator and the denominator of your function. So I'm going to go ahead and write down the problem. And while I write down the numerator, the top of my fraction, I'm just kind of looking to see what do they have in common? Is there anything that jumps out at me that they share? And the first thing that jumps out to me is an x. So I can go ahead and take that x away from both of them. Now, if this x had a bigger exponent and this x had a larger exponent, I could take more than just one x. But at this point, I can only take out one x. Once I decide what they share in common, I'm going to put a parentheses, and I'm going to go ahead and put what's left if I take the x away, if I divide it out. So if I divide x squared by this x that I want to take away, I'm left with just one x. Plus stays plus because that's what's there already. And then now I'm going to think 3x divided by x. Well, this x and this x would cancel each other out, leaving me simply with 3. And so there's my numerator factored. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the denominator in the bottom of my fraction. So if I look at the denominator, I see once again that I have that x in common. And same thing goes, if this was a larger exponent and this was a larger exponent, I could take more than one x. Once I've decided what I can take out, in this case a GCF, I'm going to go ahead and put my parentheses, and I'm going to do the same thing. X squared divided by x would give me x plus, because that's what was in the denominator, the bottom already, and 5x divided by x would cancel out the x's and leaving me just with the 5. So now I've gone ahead and factored. And when I have to come back and to say what's excluded from my function, this is where I want to look. So this is what I want to look at, which comes from here. This is where my excluded values that we talked about on the last video come from. And these two are the same. This is just the factored form. So we can go ahead and look at this one, and we'll come back to it in just a second. On the top and the bottom, these two are shared, so they would cancel each other out when I divide, leaving me with a simplified form of x plus 3 over x plus 5. Now, this is a perfectly fine way to write it. I like to keep them in parentheses because I know what's coming up next. And I need to think of these as these two go together, these two go together. So I like to keep the parentheses, but they're not really necessary. All right, the last thing that you're going to have to do is tell me if there's any excluded values. So let's go back to this factored form of the denominator because it's going to get me my answer faster. If I use this one, I have to do the factoring again. And since I've already done it, let's just go right here. I have two factors here. I have x, so I'm going to set it equal to 0, or I have x plus 5, so I'm going to set that equal to 0. This is solved. So there's one of my excluded values already. Over here, I'm going to subtract the 5 from both sides, canceling it out, giving me x equals -5. So I would come back to my answer and say x cannot equal 0 or -5. Now, what Khan Academy is going to do is tell you that this is an implied answer. Let me make sure I spell that correctly. And on, squeeze it in there. This is an implied answer. So on Khan Academy, you're not going to have to give this answer. This answer is implied because of the simplified denominator. So we already know that since the denominator is x plus 5, when I plug in negative 5 for x, I'm going to get an excluded value. So what you're going to put for Khan Academy is that your excluded values, excluded value is 0, but it's really and negative 5. It's just Khan Academy's not going to ask for that implied one. Okay. Just a quick misconception alert. Some of you are going to think that x plus 3 divided by x plus 5 is equal to 3 over 5 because this x and this x would cancel with the pluses. Sorry, somebody's calling my house right now. But this is not true. Remember, like I told you up here, I like to keep them in parentheses because they go together. Think of it this way. 2 plus 3 does not equal 3. 2 plus 3 really equals 5. And 2 plus 5 doesn't equal 5. 2 plus 5 really equals 7. So if I plug in the same value for x, this statement does not hold true. Okay, because 2 plus 3 is not 3, and 2 plus 5 does not equal 5. That's not true. Okay, so whenever I have a value like x along with a number being added or subtracted, they have to stay together. So that's why I kind of like to think of them, these two are together, and I like to think of them with a parentheses. So as you go on to do the assignment, there's just a few steps for you to keep in mind. And just a summary of how to simplify them. So the first thing you want to do is factor the numerator, the top of your expression, and the denominator, the bottom of your expression. Then you want to go ahead and list all the restricted or the excluded values. Those are those ones where I set them equal to 0 and solved right here that you can see. Okay, and remember, Khan Academy does not like the implied one. So anything that's left in your simplified version right here that would come from there. Notice this one came from here, from the simplified. That one doesn't get added into Khan Academy. Step 3, you're going to go cancel those common factors. That's when I crossed out the x's in the example. And step 4, which is my last step, you're going to simplify and note any restricted or excluded values not implied by the final expression. If you still need more explanation, go ahead and watch the video from Khan Academy because he'll explain it again as well. Plus, he does a couple of the Khan Academy assignment problems in his video. And that doesn't lose you any points. If you do the hint for the Khan Academy, remember, that does take away points from you and you don't get any points for that problem. So, hope this helps. See you again soon.